Happy Thanksgiving week. We have made it to the final week of the regular season. I'm Daniel, he's Mick, and well, Six Rotations was made for weeks like this. As always, brought to you by SNA Sports, better equipment for a better game. Mick, there is so much to talk about. We've got so many deciding champions already. All of the conference championships from the past weekend, 6 more to be decided this week. 18 automatic qualifiers were registered in the books the last 2 days. Ohio State fell to 2 unranked teams to put them out of the Big Ten talk. Wisconsin, Nebraska will battle on Friday. BYU, USD comes up Tuesday. There's a lot of stuff. Let's start, though, with the Big Ten, because right now, that's the conference to watch. The RPI says it. Even with the losses for Ohio State, they fall to just 6 in the RPI. You've got Wisconsin at 5, Nebraska at 7, and the 2 of them will be playing for the championship de facto on Friday in that matchup. And when you watch Ohio State this past weekend, what happened?
Well, something we've never seen. There's no Big Ten teams in the top 4 in the RPI. They're just beating each other up. And Ohio State's big win last week must have just taken everything they had, because they were 0-3 against Maryland and 2-3 against Indiana. Crazy. 2 teams that are not going to get into the tournament. So, holy cow, we're in for a fast and furious finish here.
That's kind of what this episode is going to be. So, folks, I would recommend strapping in. We're going to get you all the information you can in about 30 minutes here for you. Indiana picks up their first ever top 5 road win. Wisconsin wins a thriller in 5 against Penn State after the Nittany Lions beat Minnesota. Wisconsin jumped out to that 5-1 lead, trailed 11-9, and then went on the 5-0 run to all but seal it. They'll win the Big Ten at Nebraska on Friday if they win. But if Nebraska wins, then Saturday comes into play, where Minnesota, Nebraska, Ohio State, Wisconsin, it'll all be on Big Ten Network on Saturday. How about Marquette getting revenge over Creighton? They win the Big East regular season with the sweep. Revenge sweeps were a theme. Gators sweep Kentucky on Friday. Kentucky returns the favor on Saturday, sweeps Florida in Gainesville. So the 2 of them are tied at the top of the SEC. They still have a little bit of semantics to work out. Louisville gets revenge and sweeps Pittsburgh. They're now tied atop the ACC. Pitt, Georgia Tech on Wednesday, Louisville, Notre Dame. What do you think about the ACC picture with Louisville 2, Pittsburgh 4 in the RPI?
Well, I think that's pretty interesting. And I thought Pitt should have put up a better struggle against Louisville, but it was at Louisville in the small gym. So they really get you in there. They pack them in, and you better play well or you're not even in the match. So interesting.
Are you putting Claire Chaussee at the top of the list? Julia Bergman, Claire Chaussee, National Player of the Year. They kind of dueled there.
Chaussee is bringing it every night. You know, there were a lot of top 10, top 15 teams that were flat this weekend. Some of them won, a lot of them lost, but a lot of them did not play to their top level. This is getting to be a grind, trying to get to the tournament and still win. So it's very hard on the players right now. We're going to see some very close matches.
We'll get you our AVCA top 10, top 25 in a minute, but there's still so much left from last week. How about middle of the week? BYU swept Pepperdine. USD survived Loyola Marymount in 5. All 4 of those teams are probably in the tournament. We've got bracketology to talk about as well. I've got the bracketology updated on our Twitter page, 6 Rotations. We'll bring it up in just a second and show you it. USD wins the conference. They were able to power through Pepperdine in 4. LMU is now ahead of Pepperdine in RPI. USD drops their RPI because of the Ohio State losses. So much in flux. BYU and USD will battle this Tuesday. How about Western Kentucky and Rice? A crazy championship in the Conference USA on Sunday. Western Kentucky, match point. Looked like they won it. The broadcasters thought they won it. Maybe they wanted them to win it if you watch that one on ESPN+, but no, there was a net violation call. Then they go to 5 sets. On match point, it maybe looked like there was a touch on that error by Briggs, no challenge by Travis Hudson. So Rice gets revenge. They beat Western for the first time since 2018. They stamped their ticket, but both teams are probably in the dance anyways. How about Texas? They beat Baylor in 4 sets over the weekend. Iowa State fell to Kansas in a big upset in the Big 12. Those 4 teams are probably all in. TCU as well, knocking on the door. They should be secure in their 40 RPI. Now we could talk bubble, Mick. Michigan fell to Purdue. Purdue fell to Nebraska. Michigan beat Maryland, but they have Iowa and Rutgers left. They're 51 RPI. Northwestern lost to Indiana and Michigan State. I think they're out, but they get Penn State and Illinois. Michigan, though, they need those bid stealers to win the conference. UNLV is the big one as well. They also need Colorado State to try to come up big in their conference tournament.
Yeah, I don't see Michigan getting in. I don't see Northwestern getting in. I think TCU is going to luck out and get in.
Yeah, they're in,
honestly don't see Georgia getting in the SEC at 45. I think Pepperdine could be in jeopardy at 43 as the 4th team. I think LMU is the hottest team in the conference right now, playing really, really good volleyball. But BYU hasn't seen them now. Well, they saw them a week ago, but BYU is playing free right now. So it's interesting to see who's playing well and who's struggling. Texas came out flat. Baylor played well, but Texas was just flat. And they seem to be changing some roles on the Texas team right now. And I just, this bothers me late in the match, late in the year to see people making changes like this. But it's interesting. Coaches are going for it right now.
Well, UNI is the team that I mentioned. I said Colorado State. UNI is that team, Northern Iowa, that could also steal a bid. But Mick, are you looking at how many at-larges there are available? That's the thing. There haven't been any upsets in the mid-majors yet. Now, of course, we get the MAC tournament on Tuesday wrapping up, but it looks to me at least like those teams that you think are out, there's a lot of spots left. Georgia is
11.
in my last 4 in. Michigan right now is hanging by a thread. Utah needs to beat Colorado. Let's look at my last 4 in, first 4 out here. Colorado State is the team that I think deserves to be in, but they need to avoid an upset in the first round of their conference tournament. Colorado State 3-4 against the top 50. They have wins over UNLV, Florida Gulf Coast, and Colorado. All 3 of those teams will be in the dance. Michigan is 1-9 against the top 50. And we're looking at maybe 47 being that border on the RPI right now. Pepperdine, Georgia, Colorado, all pretty secure. LSU as well, as they were able to hold on and beat last weekend's opponents. They get Georgia coming up. Tennessee's in. There's a lot of craziness. Tennessee beat Mississippi State. They look like they're in as well. I'm excited to be wrong, though. So all of this jibber jabber, we have no idea if it's actually going to come true or not. Here's the bubble talk from last week. Colorado swept Washington. Washington State swept Utah. So Utah needs to beat Colorado. Oregon comes back to beat UCLA and USC in 5. Great weekend for the Ducks. I mentioned the Kansas win. Georgia got the 2 wins over Ole Miss. That'll probably get them in. And Mick, let's take a breather here. What do you think when we look at this week is your biggest match of the week for this bubble? Is it maybe the Northwestern Penn State match? That could probably keep them hanging around. Washington State. Washington needs to win that one.
See, I think Washington's on free fall. Yeah. I think the last 4 weeks they have been just spiraling down. I'm not sure you won't see them not get in the tournament. Although at 38, you almost can't fathom them not getting in the tournament. You said 47. I'm more at 43 on the RPI, and with the committee then picking some teams that they think deserve to get in that might be below that 43 line. I really think that's more where I see this coming down. So what that would give me is the most even distribution of the top 6 conferences. If I include the WCC as one of the 6 conferences, I see Big 12 with 5, Big 10 with 6, ACC with 5, SEC with 6, Pac-12 with 5, WCC potentially with 4, although I said I didn't think Pepperdine would make it. That's as close as we've ever seen conferences battle for spots.
Well, I'm gonna stat check you then here on your math, because if you've got Michigan and Utah missing the tournament, then you've
I
got to
do.
fill about 4 spots here. Do you have Texas State in? Is that the team that you've got? Because they're at 45.
That's a bubble team that because JMU won that tournament this weekend, and they're 22nd in the RPI. Believe that or not, that brought Texas State up to 43, I believe, maybe 44.
I see them at 45 right now. So what we have right here, and I'll show you it.
Yep.
LMU 40, and then TCU, LSU, Pepperdine, Georgia, Texas State. I've got those all in up to Texas State. Then Colorado is 46, Colorado State 47. I mentioned Northern Iowa, they're 48. South Dakota in the Summit League, they need to win their conference. They're 49. Then you've got Michigan 50, Utah 52. I don't see anyone below them making it. There is Big Ten bias always. So I think Michigan is going to be in. I think Michigan is a team that the conference committee they love them. And if they beat Iowa and Rutgers, it's hard to keep them out. They're 1-9 against the top 50. That's tough. But Mick, you'll have to look at my bracketology, because if you count all the teams, I'm just saying, you count all the teams, you're missing a bunch of teams if you say it stops at 44.
Well, I'm not missing any teams. I've got enough teams to get into this tournament. And besides the number of teams, who's going to host? If you look at the top 16 in the RPI, and then you look today at the top 16 of the coaches poll, the coaches really think differently than the RPI on the top 16 hosting, right?
Great segue. Let's look at our top 10 now for the coaches. And you know what? We'll open it up. Here's the top 25. We don't have that much holding us for the coaches poll here. So this is the coaches top 25. Ohio State drops to 8. It's still Texas, San Diego. 1, 2, 3, 4 is the same. Stanford moves up from 8 to 6. Nebraska from 6 to 5 with the Ohio State drop. Florida goes from 10 to 12 despite sweeping Kentucky. They, of course, lost to them. Marquette jumps up from 16 to 14 with Creighton falling from 11 to 15. And then at the bottom of it, nobody knew in this top 25. Comparing this to the RPI, Mick, the top 16 RPI has Creighton at 16, Rice, Baylor, Minnesota all in with Marquette as well. Do you see Creighton and Marquette hosting?
Yeah, I do see that. I see that. And I see a lot of Midwest hosting. I also see 3 potential hosts in Texas. And that means, where are they going to get those teams to come to them?
Well, you're assuming Houston beats UCF. I think the winner of that will host. They'll play on Friday.
I think they're both so high. Well,
17 and 18 is the RPI right now for those
That's
two.
not really true. You're right. I thought where neither one of them hosts, but is UCF the most underrated team in the country? Or because their numbers put them right up with Texas when you look at points
they're
scored,
pretty dang good.
Points given up, and Houston's not far behind, even though Houston is kind of the favorite of people to win that conference. I think UCF maybe is even better.
Well, they lost to Houston, though, so they've got to get some revenge. We know the revenge has been a theme, so we'll keep an eye on that. Also, if Georgia Tech beats Pitt, they're probably in the top 16. I'm not sure Baylor deserves to host. That's going to be my Texas team that you leave out. They lost a couple tough ones. They lost to TCU. Obviously, they've lost both to Texas. They don't have many of those marquee wins. You got to get Rice in there. And then you mentioned the geography aspect. You're going to have Florida and UCF hosting. That's a question mark. I think the committee would rather avoid the 2 Florida host situations. And then, of course, if Georgia Tech throws in there, we got a lot to talk about next week. Cannot wait for our episode coming up on Monday. We're going to try to post that for you folks on Monday. So usually Tuesday, but with Selection Sunday, we don't have to wait for a coaches poll next week. We're going to record first thing in the morning, Monday. We're going to chat with everyone that we can to try to get all of the cues coming in this weekend to see what we can lean towards. But Mick, when you look at what the top 10 was the last time the committee met, here it is now. It was Minnesota, Oregon at the bottom of that top 10. Oregon's won 11 straight. Marquette's won 11 straight. It's hard to keep either of those two out of hosting. Let's go back into the top 4 conversation, though. Do you see Louisville and Pittsburgh both regional hosts? Because I'm not sure I do.
No, I don't. I don't see them both as regional hosts. I think Pittsburgh is out as a regional host. But the strange thing to me is that Louisville's done everything to prove themselves, and the coaches don't give them that much love. They're 4th. And I feel like teetering 4th on the coaches poll, with Nebraska kind of right there just waiting. And then Stanford's not getting any love. And really, you look at their numbers, they're really a top 4 team right now.
Stanford has a case for number 1 in the nation, in my opinion. They really do. They've looked unflappable this season. Texas has a tough loss to Iowa State. Obviously, they're going to be number 1. There's no doubt about that. But I would put Stanford 2, Louisville 3, and then, yes, the Big Ten champ 4. That would be my top 4. Glad we agree on that. Mick, let's give a little bit of love now to these teams that are in the dance. We've got a ton of teams already with their tickets stamped to the NCAA tournament, 18 automatic qualifiers from the weekend. Time for us to run through that now. 2 huge upsets. Last year, it was the Citadel. Remember the 8 seed out of the SoCon Conference. This year, we have 2 6 seeds that upset number 1s to win their conference tournaments. Quinnipiac wins the MAAC over Fairfield on Saturday, their first tournament appearance. Tennessee State beat SEMO to win the OVC, 2 6 seeds. And then there were a lot of chalk. Colgate survives Navy in 5 to go back-to-back in the Patriot League. James Madison finishes their perfect conference season in their inaugural Sun Belt League appearance. They beat Texas State. Watch out, though. Texas State's sitting right on that border, as we mentioned. They are literally standing on it, 45th RPI. I think they've got a chance to get in as well, especially with all these hosting Texas teams. Towson goes back-to-back in the CAA. You could pretty much pencil them to match up with Penn State, can't you? Because they always play every season. Yale beats Brown to win the Ivy League. Loyola Chicago wins the A10 for the first time. Sanford, big upset, sweeps Furman as the SoCon number 1 went down early in that tournament. UMBC wins the America East for the 2nd straight time. FGCU beats Liberty in 3 to win the A-Sun. Were there any ones that you were watching this weekend? I'll take myself off a break here.
Well, Sacred Heart got beat this weekend, I believe, by Fairleigh Dickinson.
Yep, Fairleigh Dickinson wins the NEC over Sacred Heart. Wright State finishes their perfect season to get back in the tournament from the Horizon League. Who else did you catch?
Well, I watched a lot of Sunbelt. There were some just unbelievable matches in the semifinals and finals of that tournament. Texas State was all but out against Southern Alabama Southern, and came back and won, only to catch that James Madison team the next day with 3 Division I big time players on that team. They score the ball like nobody, and so it's been fun so far this weekend. I actually watched a couple of live matches. Like I got to see the Texas Baylor match. Baylor was better than I thought. Texas, as I said, I thought was flat. I haven't seen them flat all year like this. They just didn't seem like they could play off of their big crowd. That was their 7th or 8th straight sellout down there. And the fans were trying to get them going, and they just couldn't get it going. I mean, they were able to do enough to win, and they played hard, but they weren't the same team. So it's pretty interesting.
Well, here's the surprise. The Big 12 for the 2nd straight year is the number 1 RPI of all the conferences. And so last year you had the 7 teams, right? West Virginia, Texas Tech, Iowa State. They all made it on the bubble. This year, could it be the SEC with Georgia, Tennessee, LSU all sitting there in the hodgepodge? Hold on. We got to give a little bit more love. ESPNU on Sunday night for the MEAC as Delaware State survived a comeback effort from Coppin State. They're in the tournament. High Point repeats against Campbell for the Big South title. Stephen F. Austin, big upset. Everyone thought it would be UTRGV in the WAC. Instead, it's SFA. FAMU goes back-to-back. They beat Alabama State for the SWAC. Southeastern upsets Houston Christian for the Southland Conference. And then we've got the following to finish it off. UNLV, of course, the big RPI watcher in the bid sealer in the Mountain West Conference. We've got the MAC Championship Tuesday at 4:30 in Muncie. Ball State, Bowling Green, maybe CMU, the 4 seed. We'll keep an eye on that. The MVC is Wednesday. Mountain West is Friday. And then it finishes with Summit, Big East, and Big Sky on Saturday. Oh, wow. I will be glued to my chair this week.
And are you picking a Big Ten champ?
I am. I'm picking Nebraska to win at home. I think we're going to split the Big Ten title. I can't see Nebraska losing in Devaney, but Saturday could bring some wrinkles because maybe a little bit of a letdown against Minnesota. We'll see about that. I think Wisconsin and Nebraska will tie. What do you think?
I think it's possible. Wisconsin seems to be playing better right now. Nebraska seemed not to be playing so well last week, but then won easily both matches this week. I have a thought about Florida, Kentucky. Kentucky has not allowed themselves to get swept very many times. However, they have a tendency to lose the first match, and then evidently their coaching staff schemes really well, and they usually come back and win that second night. You know what? There's no second chances.
I was about to say that it doesn't exist in the tournament.
So I think you need to give Florida the edge there in the SEC, and I would give them the edge. I'm not sure. I think Kentucky has done a great job with their team this year, but I don't think they can handle the tournament.
Well, in the SEC, Auburn and Arkansas both should be in RPI-wise. They'll play each other Friday, Saturday. That's a good one to keep an eye on. Of course, UCF and Houston will be great as well. BYU, San Diego, Tuesday night, ESPNU, 10 o'clock Eastern, followed by Georgia Tech Pitt on Wednesday. USC, Washington as well on Wednesday night will be great. Then Friday, 8 o'clock, Wisconsin, Nebraska. That's the one we'll be glued on. You can follow us on Twitter to get updates as well. 6 rotations there. That'll follow the AAC de facto championship with Houston and UCF at 5 o'clock Eastern. No television yet to find out. Looks like ESPN Plus, but you'll have to keep tabs on Twitter there. Lastly, let me ask you, Big East Championship, Marquette, Creighton, probably. Where's the edge?
I think Marquette's got them this year. They seem to have their number, and they seem to have the confidence that they haven't had in the past. I followed them all year. They just seem to be comfortable in their own skin, no matter what the situation is. And always before, Creighton seemed to make that last match a little bit too big for Marquette, but right now they seem awfully comfortable. They think that it feels to me like they feel like they own that conference now.
Well, folks, we want to know your opinions. Let us know who you think is going to be in, who you think is going to be out. That Michigan conversation is a big one. Colorado State, Texas State, all on that border. We've got a first 4 in. We've got a first 4 out. Cannot wait to discuss it. So comment on this video. Tweet at us at 6 Rotations. It's a week filled with interactions. So let's be back and forth here, and let's hear your opinions as we get ready for a fantastic week in college volleyball. As always, he's Mick Haley. I'm Daniel Gillman, and this is 6 Rotations.